My next guest is Dr. Craig Hane. He is also known as Dr. Dell. He's a math educator and innovator dedicated to transforming how math is taught and learned. With a Ph.D. in algebraic number theory and decades of teaching and business experience, Dr. Dell empowers students and professionals alike by demystifying math using modern tools like scientific calculators and Wolfram Alpha. His mission is to break down math barriers and inspire listeners to invest in yourself for a brighter future. Well, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Dell.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
I'm sorry?
Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
There have been many times. Well, when I was in the ninth grade in high school, in Greencastle High School in Indiana, I had done well in math up through the eighth grade because I had a homeschool teacher, my uncle Jack Davis, and he taught me practical math, and I always knew more math than my teachers did. I actually teach them because he wasn't a math teacher, but he's a practical guy. So I knew practical math. Okay. But he didn't know algebra. He was not a math teacher. And I took algebra my freshman year in high school, and I did not do well. And I was told by my principal and my counselor that I was never going to go to college because I didn't do well in algebra in high school, couldn't go to college. And my family, no one had ever gone to college in my family. So I told, you're going to be a working guy just like everybody in your family. Now, this is way back when. Remember, this back in the 50s. And I was pretty depressed that summer. I had a great teacher then in geometry, Miss O'Hare, and I did good in geometry my sophomore year. I go, oh, I like geometry. I just don't like algebra. My junior year, I had algebra again. Didn't do too well, but I was a troublemaker now because I kept asking the algebra teacher to prove things, like we prove things in geometry, and he didn't like to do that. And I didn't get a good grade again. And my geometry teacher said, Craig, in Greencastle, there was a university called DePaul University. She says, why don't you go to DePaul your senior year as a special student and take college algebra and see if that do any better. Now, she knew that he was not a very good teacher. And she knew that if I'd go and take college algebra, and if I was lucky and get a good professor, that I'd do all right. Well, that's what happened. I took college algebra. Dr. Clint Gass was the chairman of the department at DePaul. I took college algebra. I got an A in it. I did well. He was a good teacher. He became my mentor. He got me then. I wanted to leave Greencastle. He got me enrolled in the number one liberal arts college in the United States at that time in Ohio. I went there, got a 4-year degree. I'd always talk to him when I come home on vacations. He was very interested in what I was learning there. And they had a much better math department than DePaul did because it was like the number one liberal arts college in the United States, Oberlin College at that time. After I graduated more, by the way, I've never in my life wanted to have a job. I always just wanted to have adventures. And I graduated Moreland, and my first adventure happened. I got to teach all of the high school math, all 4 years of it, at a little school in Wakeman, Ohio called Western Reserve High School. And up until then, I tutored students, and I never had a failure as a tutor. But as a teacher in a classroom, I had failures. I
Yeah.
couldn't keep up. I couldn't tutor them. Did that for a year on a temporary permit in Ohio, came back, and Dr. Gass said, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, I'm going on sabbatical, second semester next year. Why don't you teach at DePaul? I
Okay.
said, really? I said, what do you want me to teach? He said, well, you've learned advanced theoretical math at Oberlin that we don't know. I want you to teach our most advanced math students the things you learned at Oberlin. So at age 22, I was teaching the most advanced math classes at DePaul University. This was a kid that was in the trenches of failing algebra in high school.
Wow. Yeah, that was like full circle.
Then he suggested I go to graduate school the first semester. I went to Indiana University, which is 50 miles away down the road at Bloomington. And I really liked grad school. It was a lot of fun. And so I went into grad school and well, math is something you can study anywhere, anytime. And so I played rugby and I rode motorcycles and I partied and I had a lot of fun while learning math. I didn't get a master's degree because you had to take a test, and I don't like math tests. I didn't take it. Don't have a master's degree. But 4 years later, the only thing that really counts in grad school is writing a thesis. I did that, and they gave me a Ph.D. and said,
Okay.
now go out and be a professor. So then I was a professor for 7 years. Indiana State University, 3 years, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, 4 years. Then I went into business. I started applying math to all sorts of businesses and up and down, up and down. And now you talk about trenches. I'd start a business, it'd be successful, then it would fail. I started another business, it'd be successful, then it would fail. 4 major failures in 10 years, including me going broke. That's go broke when you are married with 2 children and you can't even get a credit card. Would you say that's been in the trenches?
Definitely.
But just keep on going, keep applying math. Finally, in 1980, I and I won't get into all those businesses. We could spend 2 or 3 hours talking about them. I built the #1 eighth mile drag strip in the United States. Racing gasoline company. Um, I designed something called the Dynabrain for testing racing engines on dynamometers, all by cause of practical math. And by the way, the theoretical math never helped me much. It's always the practical math, the
Okay.
math that you should learn in high school. And I enjoy theoretical math just as something to think about, but it's not practical. Practical math you can apply, and that's what I did. And then finally, that last project failed. I built this thing called the Dynabrain for testing racing engines on dynamometers. NASCAR were my customers, my #1 customer, and I met him before he became racer with Dale Earnhardt and his Australian racing team. Then I couldn't produce the product because Intel quit making the microprocessor. So that was my last failure. So then I started a company called Hane Training,
Okay.
Hane Industrial Training, and I started teaching technicians in the military first and then in industry to troubleshoot electronic circuits. And I taught them the practical math they needed to do it, along with the practical technology. And from starting in 1980, the first year I did $35,000 in sales. That was on-site workshops, hands-on, practical. And I grew every year, every year. And in the year 2000, we got up to 3 million in sales. By that time, I had about 30 instructors. The key to that was always practical math. And, but I made so much money, I started traveling and having a lot of fun and all that. Um, really made millions of dollars. But God takes care of you. When I was 70 years old in 2008, I went broke again. How's that for the trenches? The
Yeah.
banks did it. Remember the
Uh-huh.
bank crisis in 2008? I had $3 million in assets with $1 million worth of bank loans. One little bitty loan, a bank foreclosed, they all foreclosed. Long story short, I fought them for 3 years and they took everything. My home, everything. I had nothing. 2011, I had nothing. Now I was 70 years old in 2008. So now I'm 73 years old, nothing. Doesn't matter. I learned as in my Christian church when I was 10 years old, God will always take care of you if you do the right thing. So
Yeah.
I just kept on working. By 2014, I had I got money back. I'm financially independent 3 years later. Practical math is the key to everything for me, my whole life. And so then what I started doing in 2011, I, because of technology, I started an online program teaching
Okay.
anybody the practical math that my 3 wonderful teachers taught me. My 3 teachers were Uncle Jack, Miss O'Hare, and Dr. Gass. Had it been for any of those 3 teachers, you'd never heard of me. My brother, my younger brother, didn't have those 3 teachers. He's just as smart as I am. He didn't even go to college. Okay. I went to college, got a Ph.D. But it was 3 wonderful teachers were the kids. So now what I'm trying to do is be that wonderful teacher for any student out there. Any student today can learn practical math quick and easy with a modern using a calculator, the TI-30XA. I teach them practical algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, all 3 of those subjects in about 1 semester. They're
Okay.
now ready for
Okay.
they're ready for the military. They're ready for the technical world. If they want to go into science engineering, then I have upper training for that that goes much deeper into math that you need for science engineering. And that's what I use the modern tool, Wolfram Alpha. That came out in 2009, and it makes For example, it makes integral calculus, which flunked more kids out of engineering school than anything else. It takes them from a difficulty level of 8 down to 2. Math is no longer a barrier for science. But if you use that tool, Wolfram Alpha came out in 2009. And to my knowledge, no schools are teaching it yet.
I think that, that's very impressive how, you've been able to really pick yourself up all those times that you said you've had those trenches, you've been broke, you reinvented yourself 10 years ago again, teaching online. We're here also to talk about, you wrote a book recently called How Public School Math is Destroying the USA. So, what are you talking about in the book in terms of just the pedagogy that's math content and how it's not the teacher's fault, but why students aren't learning math well?
Well, it's not the teacher's fault, by the way. On the back of
Yeah,
the book, I say public school math is a disgrace, and we're all victims. Students, math teachers, schools, and the American public. We're all victims. It's a systemic problem. It's
yeah,
evolved over the last 100 years. What
yeah.
I do in this book, you can buy this book on Amazon for less than $5, or you can go to my personal website and I give you a free PDF copy of it. So just remember that. My name is Craig Hane, and I have a personal website, Craig Hane, CraigHane.com. You go there, I got lots of stuff there that's free. And one of them is a copy of this book. Now, what I do in this book, there's 5 parts to it. Part 1, I sort of ask you questions about what you think about math education. What's your experience? And so on. Just think about that. So most people, 90% of all the people in this country have had a bad experience with math education.
Yeah.
They, they struggle with it. Most people. And even the ones that survived it didn't like it. Most of them. Okay. In part 2, I tell the first part of my story up through high school. In part 3, I tell my story then up through the rest of it. Okay, you don't have to read those parts. Those are just introduction. Now, part 4, in 4 chapters, I tell you what is wrong with public school math, why it is bad. There's 4 chapters. You can read the whole thing probably in 30 minutes. 4 chapters. They're not real long chapters.
Yeah.
What's wrong with public school math? It's not the teacher's fault. Every high school math textbook today is obsolete. And the teachers have been taught the wrong thing. And the reason is they're full of theoretical tools that you'll never use, that are hard to learn. They're also full of obsolete manual tools you'll never use. And that's all the things you will need to learn are all mixed in with that stuff. And it's just terrible. In part, that's part 4. In part 5, I should tell you about the new program, Try and Math, that solves that problem. And any student, I'd say 9 out of 10 students will be successful in math. By the way, there's only one grade in math, A. You either know it or you don't know it.
Yeah.
The way I teach math, I do one lesson at a time, like climbing a ladder. I make sure you're not missing anything. I'm teaching you things that you will find useful in your life. I'm not teaching you, how much math do you know? I forget, Dana. What's your background?
I just have high school math.
Okay. Well, whoever your audience is, I don't know your math background of your audience, but for example, in algebra, they may want to teach you that the square root of 2 is an irrational number, which is true. And I know all about it and I can explain it to you. But guess what? Who cares? It's a theoretical thing that no practical person cares about.
Yeah.
And I could take an algebra book, 300 or 400 page book today that's a lot of money, and I could go through and show you where 80% of it you shouldn't even be exposed to. Shouldn't be that. You shouldn't have to learn it. I don't use algebra books in my first, I have 6 tiers. The first 2 tiers are practical math. I can't use any book because there's no book that does it. I use notes and exercises and tutorial videos. My tutorial videos come off of Amazon Web Services. That's why I can do it so inexpensively. If you hired me as a tutor to tutor your child, well, first of all, I wouldn't do it because I don't, I don't do that anymore. But if I did do it, it would cost you thousands of dollars.
Sure.
You get it because it's online and it's all automated, you're getting it for next to nothing. It's not
Mhm.
free, but it's close to, in fact, it can be for free. Because what I've added recently, in addition to math, I learned a lot of things over the years from a lot of different people I call them wisdom tools that help me improve my life. I had a lot of, look, everybody in life has ups and downs. I had a lot of setbacks in my life. I was an alcoholic one time. I smoked cigarettes at one time. I had stomach problems and took Maalox and on and on. I got over all that. I tell you how I did it and the wisdom tools, all sorts of wisdom tools. There's about 20 of them. So I formed what I call the Triad Math Tribe.
Okay.
You can join, you can join the tribe if you're an adult, 18 years or older, $30 a month. Now, when you go to my website, I'll tell you about it and you learn all about it. But the bottom line of it is, if you're an adult, first of all, you can learn all the math that I teach as much as you want. And if you have children, they can learn it too. That's all part of the $30 a month. But in addition to that, I give you a whole bunch of wisdom tools. And it's something that I learned over many decades. I mean, once you join the tribe, I think you'll stay in it for years because there's more to learn all the time. I mean, I still learn things today. I put in
Yeah.
a wisdom tool the other day I learned recently, and I'm 86 years old, and I just learned
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
You never get, as long as you're doing something positive in life and helping people, and living by good rules. I mean, I was fortunate when I was 10 years old. I went to the Christian church to Sunday school and I had a wonderful teacher. And he taught me, he said, Craig, here's the rules you want to live by.
Uh-huh.
The golden rule. Don't judge other people. That's not up to you to do. Love everyone. And it's hard to love somebody that's done something that you think is bad, but you got to do that. You don't love the bad act, but you love the person.
Yeah.
Okay? How do you love Charles Manson? Look at the bad things he did, but how do you love it? Well, that's Christianity. That's what they teach you. The big thing he taught me was, Craig, whatever you believe, if you really believe it, it'll happen. And that happen. I can give you example after example after example of things I believed, very improbable things, and they happen for me. Now, that's sort of that's not science now. That's more of a religion thing. Although uh, those rules can apply to anybody. I don't care what your religion is. You can be an atheist, you can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim, live
Hmm.
by the right rules. And today, my the reason I do what I'm doing, by the way, is I love children and I love teaching children. I love helping them. And when I say children, anybody under 50 is a child to me. So, or even under 70, but particularly young adults. And today, we live in a very difficult world. Things are changing so rapidly with artificial intelligence and all the communication technologies and all that, that a young adult has a challenge to live. And I try to teach them wisdom tools, in addition to the math, wisdom tools that'll help them live a better life. And then they join the tribe. By the way, if they're under 18, it's only $9 a month. But if they join it, let's say they're over 18, it's not 30 a month. But then if they go recruit other members, I pay them to do that. And pretty
Okay.
soon it's not cost them anything. In fact, if they can't afford it, I'll let them come in and join it for nothing as long as they agree that once they learn from it, that they will then pay what they could have paid, but they don't have to pay it if they never learn anything. In fact, the first 30 days is free anyway. First 30 days, if you join it, don't like it, you drop out and you didn't get charged anything.
Hmm.
That's
So you told,
that's
yeah, I think, just if parents want to join with their students, I'll put the math link in the show notes. What can you say about the future of math education? How schools, parents, and students can contribute to a positive mission of learning math in a more
I,
practical way.
as of today, the only good way to learn math that I know of is my program, Triad Math, because of the content and the pedagogy. In this book, I explain the right pedagogy. I call it SPIKE pedagogy. I made up the acronym SPIKE. And I explain what that is. Self-pacing, proper content, interactivity, keeping score, and empathy. You make a lot of mistakes when you do math. I've made more mistakes probably doing math than anybody you'll ever meet because I've done so much math and learned so much math. And you make mistakes. Well, that's not a bad thing. You learn from them. And that's how I teach that. Well, anyway, the other thing is proper content. And the only program today, do you know of any other program where you can learn? Well, the first thing I do is I teach you how to use a scientific calculator, TI-30XA. I don't know if I got one with me or not. Yeah. Yeah, I got one, Karen. Do you know how much this calculator costs? It's the best scientific calculator out there today. It would have been worth $1 million back during the Manhattan Project if they'd have had one. Do you know how much this calculator costs?
$10.
$10. Never buy another, you never have to buy a more expensive calculator. By the way, once you learn this, you'll be able to use other scientific calculators like on your phone or whatever. But never,
Hmm.
you don't need now they sell much more expensive calculators like graphing calculators. They're
Sure.
obsolete. Why? Wolfram Alpha.
Hmm.
Wolfram Alpha is free on the internet. And so uh, I don't, what was I saying now? So what you do is the only program today that does this is mine. If there's another one, if you can show me another program that's as good or better than mine, I will give you $1,000 cash. Somebody might come out with a better one. That's fine, but I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's going to have to use spike pedagogy, self-pacing, proper content, which is the biggie, huge, interactivity. Like we have a forum, you have a question, you go and you ask a question on a forum. But
Hmm.
the big thing about interactivity is I have my tutorial video, but I'm also got quizzes and exercises. You do exercises, you take a quiz, you go back, watch the video. It's back and forth. It's like me as a tutor, except you control it. You can back me up, you can pause me, you can leave, you can come back, watch it over and over. You can't do that
Yeah.
with a live tutor.
Hmm.
Now, people talk about Khan Academy, and I say if you're taking a regular course in school and you're taking subjects that I don't even teach because they're inappropriate and you need help with it, go to Khan Academy because he teaches the standard curriculum. Khan
Yeah.
Academy is great. It's free, but it doesn't do what I do. We're not in
Yeah.
competition. We're not in competition at all
Yeah.
because of the content I do. And I was able to do that because I, I'm financially independent and I wasn't dependent on someone to tell me what to do. I wasn't using some book. I started with from scratch to say, okay, if I was teaching my child today math, what would I do? And I did, that's what I did. And now because of the technology, I can teach your child or any child. And we
Yeah.
have hundreds of kids, by the way, that have taken my program and they rave on it. I have all kinds of testimonials that I can give you, but the only testimonial that counts is your own. And
Yeah.
so I tell people, take my program. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to learn how to use a calculator. If you don't like that and you can't learn from me, forget it. I can't
Yeah.
help you. Most kids have struggled with, a lot of kids have struggled with math. They don't like math. They're afraid of math. Once they take the calculator, well, that was easy. That can't be math. Well, no, math doesn't get any harder when it's taught properly and the right content. That's the biggie, the right content. Now, in my book, I explain triad math in part 5. I tell all about it, exactly what it is, exactly what you're getting, and including the table of contents, the syllabus. If you ask me to evaluate somebody else's math program, I say, send me their syllabus. I want to see what they're teaching. And then I'll give you an evaluation just from the syllabus. If you can't send me the syllabus, I'm not going to evaluate it. I'm not going to go take their program, which you know, but there's no one doing this today that I'm aware of. Like I said, if you can find a program as good as mine or better, I'll give you $1,000. Then great. And then I'll tell people about it. Go take it. Now,
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the future? Our schools are going to have to adopt this because, or something like it, because they're failing miserably now. And the reason our technology is so bad in this country and our kids are not learning the technology and is the math. It's a barrier. That my program removes the barrier. Today, there's a big controversy with Elon Musk and Trump and others over H-1B visas because other countries take their best students and they put them in a special program and they teach them better. We don't do that
Yeah.
in our public schools. Our public schools don't do that. The teachers can't even do it. They don't even know. The high school math teachers are victims of our current program. They're victims because they've been taught what they're teaching. And they're told, well, that's what you should teach.
Yeah.
You should teach the rational roots test for polynomials with integer coefficients. That's in the algebra. You should teach it. Bull. It's obsolete. No one ever uses it. And it's hard to learn. It's hard to do. Oh, learning the rules of arithmetic. The manual tools of doing arithmetic are very time consuming and error prone and they're hard to learn. The calculator takes all that away. I, for example, fractions. You gotta do things with fractions. That to do algebra, practical algebra and geometry, you got to do fractions. Okay, you tell me, what is 2/3 plus 3/4? Well, you can do it the long way, but it's 1 and 5/12. You say, well, what's
Mhm.
that in an improper fraction? Well, that is 17/12. What's that in terms of decimals? Well, it is 1.416. I mean, that's all done automatically. Do you know how hard that is to do manually?
Yeah, and you told
It's
me
time
even
consuming.
yeah, calculus you can even use that calculator for.
No, this is
Okay.
for practical math. For
Okay.
calculus, we use Wolfram Alpha.
Okay.
Wolfram Alpha will take problems that are extremely difficult manually.
Okay.
Boom, it does them and explains how they work. In fact, it does. Here's the thing about calculus: you use it to analyze functions, and they have to give you functions that the calculus will work for. There's a lot of functions it won't work for. Wolfram Alpha does it for everything, and so it takes calculus. Integral calculus goes from a level of difficulty of 8 down to 2. Then you do differential equations. You never do that in high school, but we do now because Wolfram Alpha makes it easy. And differential equations are the workhorse of science and engineering. If you take my program, one of my students, 17 years old, had been through all 6 tiers. He went to the Air Force Academy and they put him in with a class of juniors. He just went there for an interview. They put him with a bunch of juniors and he knew more math than they did. And they said, how'd you learn all this math? How do you know all this? He said, well, triad math. I use Wolfram Alpha. They go,
Yeah.
oh, well, yeah, we know about Wolfram Alpha, but we don't teach
Mhm.
it in our math classes. It's not in any math book. I went to an engineering school where I used to teach, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute, a couple of years ago. And I just walked in. They hadn't seen me. I've been back there for decades. I walked in. Hi, how you doing? This used to be my office, blah, blah, blah. Went in and talked to the department chairman. I said, what are you teaching these days? He said, well, we're doing so-and-so. I said, let me see your book. I look at it. I said, you still teaching this? He said, yeah. I said, why? Why are you teaching manual tools that are obsolete? I said, don't you use Wolfram Alpha. Oh, no, we don't use Wolfram Alpha.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it's considered one of the best engineering. They claim they're the best undergraduate engineering school in the country. They run ads on that.
Yeah.
Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. I taught there 4 years, many, many years ago, long before any of this new technology. I taught the old manual tools. I know how hard they are. I taught them. And I saw
Yeah.
kids drop out of Rose because they couldn't master them. One of the most brilliant electronics technicians in Terre Haute, Indiana, was a guy named Dave Ford, and he flunked out of Rose. And then he learned electronics on his own. And I know because he was working for me when I was building the Dynabrain. And I asked him, I said, why don't you have an engineering degree? And he said, I flunked out of Rose. I said, you're kidding. No. I said, let me guess why. Integral calculus. How'd you know? Well, that flunked more kids out of Rose than anything else. I even knew who his professor was. I won't mention the name since
Yeah. Yeah.
although the guy's dead now, but I knew the guy. I said, was he? Because he was a terrible teacher at Rose. and and Dave Ford, the most brilliant electronics technician in Terre Haute, Indiana, flunked out of Rose-Hulman.
I think like what you're saying, this is definitely a program. The example you gave about the Air Force Academy student really that helps kids go a long way when they're going through high school and going into college. I think
Oh yeah.
what you've told me about the program is really interesting. Out of everything we've talked about today on the podcast, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Go to my website, craighane.com.
Okay.
There's a lot of free stuff there. There's a video library that's just general. It's not training. It's just a bunch of stuff about math if you're interested in it.
Uh huh.
One of the near the bottom, one I did recently is called Math Proves God Exists. Okay?
Okay.
Math, not religion. Math proves God exists. And science, I might add, math and science together. That's but I have lots of videos on there. Is a Pythagorean theorem always true? The answer is no. People don't know that. Why not? Well, I'll explain why it's not always true, when it's not true, and just all sorts of things. Uh, those are free videos. Now, I also have my Vita there and my story, but then I also have a free PDF copy of this book. But I got another book that's not been published on Amazon called How
Okay.
and Why Homeschool Math Can Be Vastly Superior to Public School Math. And it's free. You click and go to it. And each chapter is a PDF you can print out or a video where I tell you about it. So you can actually just listen to it.
Okay.
And that's probably for most people better than this book. This is a book to explain to people why public school math's failing and what can be done about it. The
Okay.
other book is just explain why homeschool math, if you can do, and any parent today could do homeschool math because of my program. Even if your school's going to a public school.
Yeah.
When my kids were young, I have three children. They went to public school, all of them. It was a pretty good public school, and Terre Haute, Indiana, and also then in Bloomington, Indiana. Pretty good public schools. But I taught them the math they needed at home.
Yeah.
My oldest son is a managing director of the world's largest consulting company. He's one of the managing directors of it. My daughter, younger daughter, she has a doctor in computer science from Illinois, and she works under the president at Michigan State University, dispersing funds to all the different departments. What they couldn't have done that if I hadn't taught them the math they needed to know. And
Using math in their careers.
they're no brighter than other children. I'm not a genius. I am not a genius. I'm a lucky guy that I had three good teachers. My
Yeah.
brother is just as smart as I am, and he didn't even go to college.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I am not a genius. I want that made clear. And yeah, the fact I got a PhD in math, don't hold that against me. It's theoretical math, and I can tell you all kinds of things about theoretical math that you don't want to know because it's all theory. Pi is an irrational number, but it's a transcendental irrational number. What does that mean? And blah, 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 blah. You don't care about that. I don't teach that because actually, I may someday do some training in upper tiers on theoretical math just for people that might want to go into theory, but I haven't done it yet. And I don't know
Okay.
if I ever will. But I'm only 86 years old. I got another
Sure.
20 years to live, so I may get
Sure.
around to it. We'll
Uh-huh.
see.
Yeah.
Uh, I must say this, and this is part of what's in my wisdom tools. If you see, my wisdom tools are probably going to be more important than the math for most people because I've had an adventuresome life. I've done all sorts of things and just all sorts I want to do. And
Yeah. And the fact that you're using some of these tools in helping students with triad math and in inserting some of those tools in your
yeah,
program really helps bring the youth forward and learn some of these life lessons early.
yes,
Well, I'll
yeah.
make sure that I put your links in the show notes. I have all your social media links, your YouTube channel, and people can join, like you said, for $30 a month. I think we've had a great conversation today around your experience starting out as a high schooler learning math and how you are today at 86 still teaching math.
Let me interrupt you. I
Uh-huh.
started out learning math from my uncle Jack Davis. This is 1943 during World War II. He taught me to count with Cheerios
Mhm.
at age 5, and my dad put me in a school a year earlier than other kids.
Yeah.
I, I was the only kid in my class that had learned to count, and my teacher had me help her teach the other children to count. And that my first teaching experience, I was 5 years old. You can always teach people. In fact, that's good. When you learn something, teach other people,
Yeah.
always.
Hmm. Hmm.
So enough of that. But that's in the book.
No.
You'll learn all that.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy of how you kind of were born to be that math teacher. Well, thank you so much for your
Thank
time and
you.
being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a pleasure.
And will I get a copy of the video?
Yes.